Space. The final frontier. These are the voyages of the starship Enterprise. Our ongoing mission. To seek out new worlds. To have the first interracial kisses on television. To boldly go where no man has gone before. Except not really, not exactly. Well, sort of. It's hard to explain. So, this question comes up sometimes. And the common answer is actually technically wrong. The question is simply, what was the first interracial kiss on television? Now, as I'm sure doubtless pretty much all of you are aware, a kiss is an exchange of affection between two different people. But, of course, people that are, well, racist, have historically taken issue with the notion of exchanging affection between people of different ethnic backgrounds. Now, most reasonable people will tell you that this is, of course, ridiculous, but for a long time, and even now, there are still people on this planet that don't think that should happen. Regardless of the opinion on the topic, the point is that for a while in television history, such a thing wasn't allowed to be viewed on TV. It just wasn't something anybody did, whether it was out of hate or out of fear of losing their future career prospects if they were to air something like that might be seen as super-de-duper controversial, like, I don't know, two consenting adults kissing. Yeah, real risque, I know. But when that question comes up, most people will tell you that Star Trek aired the first kiss between two people of different races. Captain Kirk, played by William Shatner, and Nyota Uhura, played by Nichelle Nichols. And while it does represent a very critical point in television history and was influential in terms of showing that sort of thing at a time when the world desperately needed to see that this was, like, an okay thing, it wasn't the first time that had been shown on television at all. But it's understandable why people are drawn to Star Trek because, A, Star Trek is a massive franchise and is incredibly popular. I myself am a huge Star Trek junkie, and I'm not apologizing for it. Live long and prosper. But the other thing about Star Trek is that it was super, well, I almost call it edgy in a way, for the time. Maybe that's not the right word, but it was very forward-thinking. See, the creator, Gene Roddenberry, was a World War II combat veteran. He was with the Army Air Corps and flew over 80 missions. And the thing about Gene, despite what he had been through as a veteran of the worst global conflict the world has ever seen, is that he was an optimist. He really had faith in humanity, in the future of humanity. At a time, and we still see this a lot, when a lot of fiction, science fiction especially, was portraying the future as apocalyptic or post-apocalyptic, where we had nuked ourselves into oblivion or been invaded by aliens and taken over, and all this horrific stuff, Gene developed a future where that was actually, at least when it came to humanity, an ideal society. Human beings had eventually managed to work out their differences, and in the distant future, people of different races and backgrounds would join hands, work together, and explore the stars. The show's drama comes from interaction with alien races, like the Romulans and the Klingons, but even there, Starfleet always pushes for peace, understanding, and alliances, only utilizing violence and weapons as a last resort. It was kind of a breath of fresh air, especially in those days, because this was in the middle of the Cold War, remember? People thought they might get nuked any day now because of tensions between the Soviet Union and America. But Star Trek not only was a really cool show, but also offered the idea that the future might actually wind up being a lot brighter than we might believe. It was possible to push forward and actually become better as a species. So it was very influential and successful as a result. But there was also a lot of things within it that pushed the envelope. For example, they added a Russian character, which in America was a big no-no at the time, but Chekhov is awesome. Everyone loves Chekhov.
Sir, can you direct me to the naval base in Alameda? It's where they keep the nuclear vessels.
And like I said, there were multiple different races on the bridge, officers, working together, like Uhura, working directly with the captain, Kirk, the helmsman, Sulu, and Spock. This sort of interaction was brand new and very exciting to people, especially those in support of basic civil rights for everybody, and the idea that everyone should be treated equally in the land of the free, and the rest of the world for that matter. Based on all this, the idea they would have the first interracial kiss is no surprise to anybody who knows the show, but the fact is it just isn't true. They didn't do it first. They did it, but they didn't do it first. So, who did? Well, it's actually kind of hard to say, because once you get into that topic, you start delving into what constitutes a separate race at all. For example, a lot of people argue for I Love Lucy, which first aired in 1951. Now, I Love Lucy was also a very progressive show as well. Lucille Ball stars as the title character Lucy, along with her real-life husband, as well as on-screen husband, Desi Arnaz, who plays Ricky Ricardo. Now, Desi is a man of Cuban ancestry. Therefore, it's not inaccurate to call him Latin American. The two do kiss on the show and are actually married. By some definitions, they're an interracial couple. But the problem with this is that, at the time, there wasn't that much differentiation between someone of certain ethnic backgrounds and just being straight up white. Desi was Cuban, yes, but according to a lot of the general public, as well as the 1950 American census, they actually considered him just white. The census didn't even address specifically how Cuban Americans should be classified. Arnaz was listed as white on that specific census. Plus, the show was in black and white. While looking at them, it is clear that Desi does have his ethnic background. Having slightly darker skin than Lucille, on the show, this wasn't quite as apparent. Granted, his name is frickin' Ricky Ricardo, and the character also is of Cuban ancestry, so yeah, it still should logically count, but I don't think it had the same impact. The whole thing gets really weird to talk about, to be honest, and I want to stress, I'm not telling anyone how to identify themselves as a race. I'm a white dude, okay? I'm not going to tell you what you are, or what anybody is. What I am saying is that it's quite possible, if not highly likely, that a lot of the general public back then didn't really see Desi as a man of color. So while technically speaking the relationship is interracial, it did not have the same cultural punch as later portrayals of interracial relationships would. As far as the United States was concerned, there wouldn't really be another interracial interaction of that nature until the Ed Sullivan Show in 1958. Season 12, Episode 10. William Shatner, which, yeah, Captain Kirk. He was involved in the second one that we know about, apparently. He exchanges a kiss with a woman named France Nguyen, who is also from France, while also being named France, but she has Asian ancestry. In 1959, there was Sea Hunt, episode Proof of Guilt. Lloyd Bridges and Nobu McCarthy also share a kiss, and Nobu was, while Canadian, very clearly of Asian descent. In 1960, an episode of The Adventures in Paradise, titled The Big Surf, featured two different scripted kisses, both involving an actress named Pilar Surratt, who was of Filipino descent. In 1966, an episode of I Spy called The Tiger featured a scripted kiss between France Nguyen, again, and Robert Culp. And in 1967, Star Trek actually aired an episode before the more famous episode featuring the kiss between Kirk and Uhura. This episode, Mir Mir, features a kiss between Barbara Luna and William Shatner. Her mother was Jewish from Budapest, Hungary, and her maternal grandfather was from Italy. Her father was born in the Philippines, and her paternal grandmother was from Spain. That same year, 1967, there was a TV special called Movin' with Nancy, which, for America anyway, was definitely the first kiss, in the technical sense, between an African-American and a white American, Sammy Davis Jr. and Nancy Sinatra, which was pretty groundbreaking, except this kiss was on the cheek, which... Okay, look guys, that doesn't count, and I think you know that. Though for the time it probably was a pretty big step forward. And the Star Trek episode this whole thing is about wouldn't air until 1968, known as Plato's Stepchildren. And as far as America, this does seem to be the first kiss, on the lips anyway, between a white person and a black person that was filmed and put on television. But it's not the first in the world, definitely not. The UK did that first. They had a few earlier examples of interracial affection, but back in June of 1962, a live performance of a play called You in Your Small Corner showed a kiss between Lloyd Ricard and Elizabeth McLennan. Granted, that was a live performance. In terms of a pre-recorded, television show, you'd have to look at July of 1964, when an episode of a British soap opera known as Emergency Ward 10 featured a kiss between Joan Hooley and John White. And even before the UK, back in 1959, over in the Netherlands, there was a comedy show known as Pension Homelis, which I think I'm saying right, and is considered the first TV series on Dutch television. The episodes Bildromance an African-American actor named Donald Jones sings a song to a Dutch actress, Roki Arends, and after the song, Jones kisses Arends. So the Dutch did it before the UK. You can see how confusing this gets? Though over in the Netherlands, this sort of thing didn't actually attract really hardly any attention at the time. What I think makes the Star Trek episode a bit more special is the impact that it wound up having, as well as the timing. See, while it obviously isn't the first interracial kiss on television, it was one of the ones that a lot of people first saw, as Star Trek was a very popular show. On top of that, the episode only aired a single year after the US Supreme Court made a landmark civil rights decision. The court declared that it was unconstitutional for any law to prohibit interracial marriage between, well, anyone of different races. As long as they were consenting adults, it shouldn't matter, and I think most of us would definitely agree with that it was an excellent decision. At the time, there were still a lot of state laws in place that banned marriage between people who were black or white and Native American, or white and Filipino, or white and Asian. Really, everyone could marry everybody, except no one could marry white people except other white people, and vice versa. It was ridiculous, and it was struck down, and it was a very important point in our nation's history. But when it came to the episode, production was actually a bit difficult when it came to the kiss. The kiss was written into the script, but based on interviews with both William Shatner and Nichelle Nichols, getting NBC to approve it was an uphill battle, and that included the director of the episode, who probably didn't actually have any hate in his heart. NBC may have been the same way. The issue is they were worried about public backlash. According to Shatner, NBC told them their lips must never actually touch, and that they must turn their heads away from the camera to conceal that. Though both Shatner and Nichols confirmed that they did actually kiss, because frankly the whole thing was dumb. Shatner in particular fought to be able to be the one to kiss Nichols, because for one thing he believed in basic civil rights, and for two, he kinda knew his character. Like, this is Captain Kirk on Star Trek, and this is season 3 of the original series. Season 3 Captain Kirk was out of control. The man had numerous romantic entanglements over the course of the series, from Ruth, to Janice, to Carol, to Janet, to Ariel, to Janice Rand, and Lenore, and Edith, and Drusilla, and Kalinda, and Alon, and Miramani, and Shauna, and Deela, almost Marta, though she was crazy. Also Adana. There was Reyna. And Antonia. Well, that was later. As well as Marsha, that was later too. Some of these were later. Not even in the original series. I can't keep track anymore. My point is the man was out of control, and a lot of these women weren't even actually human beings. They were aliens. So you mean to tell me that everyone's okay with Captain Kirk making out with an alien? But the second he gets involved with a real human being that just happens to have more melanin in her skin, oh, that's not okay. Is that what we're doing today? Is that what we're doing today? Yeah, it's dumb. It's ridiculous. And to be honest, in context, the kiss really isn't that impactful, because Uhura is one of the few women that Kirk never got into a genuine romantic relationship with, or even really attempted it. As part of the story, they are forced to do it due to mind control, so in a way, both characters are kind of being forced to assault each other. It's kind of gross in that regard. And the UK would actually ban that episode until 1993. And not because of the kiss, obviously, they had already shown that. The BBC had opted to skip it because of these more sadistic elements of the plot. The plot itself is way more controversial than the kiss itself. Granted, we are talking about bad guys doing bad things here to the crew of the Enterprise. I mean, it's not like they're glorifying any of this stuff, but the point is that the kiss itself was forced. It was not something that either character really wanted to do during the course of the story, but it was still something NBC was worried about regardless. They were concerned that a lot of stations, particularly in the southern United States, wouldn't actually air it because of that kiss. The cast, both Nichols and Shatner, as well as a majority of the crew, resisted this, and a compromise was made. And by compromise, I mean they basically kicked the can down the road in terms of filming. They opted to film 2 different versions of the scene, one where they kissed and one where they didn't. But this set NBC, as well as the director, up for a little bit of good old-fashioned Shatner sabotage.
I picked up some indication they are planning to sabotage the Enterprise.
Sabotage? How? When?
According to both Nichols and Shatner in later interviews, they intentionally flubbed every single version of the scene that didn't have that kiss. Apparently in some of the takes, while Shatner is known for overacting a bit as Kirk, in those, he really overacted. Like to the point where Nichols and most of the crew were laughing hysterically while filming was still going on.
Lieutenant Kirk! I'm Captain Kirk!
The director kind of got fed up with them screwing around, and they finally seemed to get a proper shot of the not kissing scene. But at the time that shot was made, the director was kind of not in line with the actors. He definitely wasn't in line with the camera view. And when they filmed it, while from his perspective it appeared the scene was fine, Shatner crossed his eyes. It is likely that many of the members of the crew saw him do this, but the director didn't, and none of them told him. No one said a word. He didn't find out till the following day, when they screened the dailies. While every single kissing scene looked fine, the non-kissing scenes looked absurd, and then the last one, which again the director thought was good, came on and Shatner was just crossing his eyes like a buffoon. They couldn't use it. It was impossible. The producers in the room realized they had been had, but they didn't have a choice. The show didn't have the budget to refilm that scene. They had no option. And they said, you know what? The heck with it. Let's go with the kiss. And they did. And the rest is history. Now, a lot of stories about this particular kiss tend to, well, frankly, lie and say that the episode was banned and people complained and da-da-da-da-da. There really wasn't that much backlash, and hardly at all by most accounts. Nichols said she got a bunch of letters from girls wondering how it felt to kiss Captain Kirk, and Shatner got letters from guys wondering how it felt to kiss Uhura. Basically, almost no one seemed to find the kiss offensive, at least among the Star Trek viewers, and that was part of the impact. It kind of got people to realize that, actually, we don't think this is a big deal. This shouldn't be a big deal. And over time, it kind of became legendary as a pivotal moment in television history, as well as Star Trek history. Some of the directors and producers say they got a couple of pieces of hate mail, but not a lot. For every one they received, they got 10 letters in favor of it. So, you know, it worked itself out. And the thing about it is that, as one television critic put it, it suggested there was a future where those kinds of interracial issues where there was supposed to be the separation weren't actually there. This wasn't a big deal. It shouldn't be a big deal, and in the future, it isn't going to be a big deal. Because the reason why this is a problem in the episode is that they're under mind control. Not because Kirk kissing a black woman is bad, or Uhura kissing a white man is bad. There was only one particular hate mail letter that was ever made public to my knowledge, and only one line from it, and I think it's because it's just hysterical. Let me read this to you. I am totally opposed to the mixing of the races. However, anytime a red-blooded American boy, like Captain Kirk, gets a beautiful dame in his arms that looks like Uhura, he ain't gonna fight it. How is anyone supposed to interpret that? Like, oh no, I'm a white southern man. Don't mix the races. Also, wow, that Nichelle Nichols is fine. I mean, the latter bit, okay, not wrong. But also, bro, just get over it. Man, it's... What is the matter with you? Grow up. Like I said, this wasn't the first time this sort of thing had happened at all. But it was probably one of the most impactful times it happened. It's the one everyone really remembers. Altogether, like a lot of Star Trek back in the day, it wound up having a positive cultural impact for the future. And whether or not it was first, the fact that it mattered is really what counts here. And with that, a special thank you to all my underwater train finders, Some Dude 267, Orange Glass, Benjamin Owens, Anzac A1, Arthur Roy, Jack Carson's Roto Videos, Lord Off 444, Isurfer 1405, Charles Kwiatkowski, Matt Weaver, Tom Redlion, NS Productions 8104, Wheeljack 8401, Rescues Greyhounds, The Baxter, Caleb Crosswhite, Andrew Bowen, Josh Johnson, Caleb Brainwaters, Prez Drenton, Master of None, Travis Stalinsky, Jared Brussel, JBL Explorers, Tommy Rossini, Ben McCullough, Panzer Kitson 131-232, Mark Holding, G Wiz, Mr. Terrevel, Hayden DeGrow, Metal for Life Guy, No, Kurt Forkham, Ohio Trucker 1, Mr. Sleepy, DM Trouble Typhoon, Harry, Drew Debris, George Kenny, Kevin Wood, Liam Wright, Morris Hillman Productions, NJ1969, Hendrick Motorsports Fan 5, Hannah Bird, Western Colorado History, Ryan Wehofer, DeRoushi, Your Mom Liked It, Windy City Rails, A Person 723, William Nemo, Dr. Racer 78, Shimasu, Murder Drone Stall, Eric Hutton, and of course, my dad. Till next time, This is Darkness, and a bit of fun. Farewell.